Hey everybody, it's Jork. Welcome back. I hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world. As you know, I talk about all things Portugal, moving here, living here, day-to-day life. If you're new and just found me, I'm glad you did. If you're interested in Portugal, whether it be coming on a vacation or living here someday, that's what this channel is about. And today I'm speaking specifically to people from the United States, Americans that are considering a move to Portugal, and a main question that gets asked when I have consulting calls is, where do I start? Where do I go to fill out an application, give documentation? What consulate do I use? Does it matter if I'm in California? Can I use the New York one? Or if I'm in Washington, Seattle, Washington, can I use another one that's, let's say, in Boston? The answers to those are no, but I'm going to go through where you live, what state you live in or territory, and what consulate that is attached to. And in many cases, most of you moving to Portugal will be using a third party service called VFS Global in conjunction with the appointment at the particular consulate that you're going to be giving documentation to and things like that before you get your visa to come on over to Portugal. So I'm going to go through the states or territories in a particular area and what consulate is attached to them, and if you're using VFS Global or not. So let's start with Massachusetts. Most of Massachusetts, with the exception of a particular area, New Bedford, I'll get into that later in the video. The state of Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont all use the Boston consulate. And so you'll work directly with the Boston consulate to be able to get your visa and get your move over here to Portugal. If you're in the states of Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, you would be going through Newark, the consulate general office in Newark, New Jersey. The New York office utilizes VFS Global. So although you're making the appointment, you'll be doing that through VFS Global to get the appointment through the office. If you live in the states of Michigan, New York, and Connecticut, or the territories of Puerto Rico and the American Virgin Islands, the Bahamas, Cayman Islands, Bermudas, all of you in that particular that fit that demographic would use the New York office, which is serviced by VFS Global. I'm going to put a link to the VFS Global in the description here, and also as you're seeing this video, I'm going through just so you can see the screenshots. You can write down the information of which place is applicable to you. So next up, this is the most interesting one. If you live in the states of Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming, you will go through the VFS Global third-party site, and that appointment will eventually be through the San Francisco office. And the reason I say this is interesting, or in many cases the most frustrating, it is by far the busiest of the VFS Global when they're facilitating through consulates. This is the busiest one in the United States. In fact, that consulate has to process more applications. The consulate says this, the San Francisco consulate, than the rest of the country combined. So there's a lot of people, if you can imagine. California, you have LA, San Francisco, San Diego, Arizona with Phoenix, Colorado with Denver. You have some major cities, Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon, that happen to have a higher percentage of its residents or citizenry that are looking to potentially move to Portugal. So that place gets inundated. So just I made a video about this recently. If you are in one of these states and you have to go through the VFS Global connected to San Francisco, you need to make that appointment sooner than later, because oftentimes it can be months in advance before you can get into the appointment to be able to get your visa. Next up, I'm going to circle back to Massachusetts, the North Bedford area. If you are in certain cities, I'm going to say Acushnet, I might have got that wrong, Dartmouth, New Bedford, and Fall River, are the counties of Barnstable, Bristol, Dukes, Nantucket, and Plymouth. Specifically, you would use the North Bedford consulate to be able to facilitate getting the visa and the move to Portugal. If you live in the state of Rhode Island, it's easy. You go through Providence, the consulate there. So you don't have to travel far to be able to get your documentation in and make your appointment and go from there. And then lastly, if you live in the states of Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and the District of Columbia, you go through VFS Global through the Washington, D.C. consulate. So, although there are more states involved in Washington, D.C., that particular consulate, the amount of people, so the amount of applications being processed, are the San Francisco office is by far the biggest one. So that is it. When you're looking from the United States and you're trying to figure out where do you start, what do you investigate, what consulate do you have to go through VFS Global, or can you work directly with the consulate? These are the parameters, and I hope that you can stop the video and look at those screenshots to where you can take down that information and know if I live in a particular place, I need to go through this VFS Global or directly through the consulate. I will say this is something that's come up in some expat or immigrant forums, and I just want to make sure that you know this. I don't know the ins and outs of this, but I will say specifically because so many people have had 5, 6, 7, 8 month delays at the San Francisco consulate through VFS Global. If you live in one of those Western states, there are some people who have made the move to Portugal that they moved from their home state to a state that was facilitated by the VFS Global in New York or Washington, D.C., or through the Boston, they moved to Massachusetts and went through the Boston consulate. I believe they all had to stay there long enough to get a driver's license, and I'm not sure if there was a requirement that they had to stay a certain amount of months before they could apply through those areas. But some people have made drastic measures going, if it's going to take 6 months or more to get through into San Francisco and I live in California, maybe I'll move someplace else. I don't think that that's necessarily a good idea, but I couldn't talk people out of that, depending on how long the waits are, especially through San Francisco. But I'm not sure the particulars there. You may want to investigate if that's something that you're interested in. If you start reading through immigrant forums or U.S. expat forums specific to Portugal, there are people that you will find in there that moved, got residency in another state, and then applied for Portugal because they could do all of that in a shorter time frame than having to wait through VFS Global to get in through San Francisco. Again, it's not something that we would do if we were in that same position, but it may be an option as more people continue to consider Portugal as a retirement destination, potentially as a work destination. Most likely that particular office is going to be more busy than the other consulates or VFS Global facilitated consulates in the United States. So I hope you found this video useful. Again, knowing where to start is important. So this at least gives you information on, depending on what state you reside in, where you will start the process, and they can work with you and give you the list of here's the documentation based upon the type of visa and go from there. It might always be worth it too to be able to find an attorney, a lawyer who deals with immigration, because if some of you are starting out and you're not sure about anything, having some legal advice can't hurt, especially before you take on the daunting task of moving from your home country to a foreign country. So as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch these videos and enjoy your travels.